Greetings, everyone. This is Richard Solomon. Welcome to Taking Care of Business. This week, I have to actually thank Jack Lerner for introducing me to Antonio Saillant, who is our special guest this week. Antonio is with Angel Light Pictures Entertainment Group, and he has a real specialization in eco-friendly adventures, for lack of a better word. Welcome to the show, and let's get right into it. Tell me about all these great things that you're doing involving the environment and eco-production in the film industry and all that great stuff. And how did you get there?
Well, for me to get into all that, I would have to tell you how I started because I didn't graduate with a film degree. That's number one. I had no intention whatsoever. I have no entertainment background at all.
Neither do I. And I don't have a radio degree either.
Yeah. So it was very interesting because I graduated with an aerospace mechanical engineering degree. And I used to be a Con Edison energy consultant. And I guess what happened was one day I met this individual at a bar, and we were having dinner, and for 4 months we became really good friends, and he just happens to be a musical director on Broadway. So he decided his name is Michael Rafter, and he did Broadway shows like Gypsy, Sound of Music, King and I, and he invited me to these dress rehearsals. And
that must have been really cool, by the way.
Oh my God! I'll be honest with you. I never went to a musical in my life. That's another thing. So when I sat there and I saw all this amazing people being creative, a dress rehearsal is when everybody who is involved creating this musical was there: family, friends, producers, people in the film industry, etc. So I got to meet all these wonderful individuals that I had no clue who they were, and they wanted to know who I was because of my relationship with Michael, and when I told them I was an engineer, they were intrigued. And I think I bonded because as an engineer, we have the ability to create and have imagination. We all know when it comes to creating a musical or anything in the film industry or television, you have to have some kind of imagination and have a heart to create. And I think that's what I fell in love with, that passion of it. So I started networking and meeting a lot of people in the business. And the funny thing is, I started connecting with big people in the film industry. Sidney Pollack was my mentor, and he invited me on the set of The Interpreter with Nicole Kidman and Sean Penn. And I was filming at the UN, and I learned so many things, and it was wonderful. But then I felt like something was missing, and I didn't know what that was. And I met this wonderful gentleman who's a business consultant, Dr. Dan Schaefer. And he said to me, Antonio, maybe what's missing is your past history as an engineer. And he showed me how to bring one into the other. And it was hard because at that time, I really had hard trouble balancing both, like juggling it all, because it was tough. So he showed me how to become an energy consultant at the same time deal with the film industry. So I had to start from the bottom as an actor. So Michael Rafter, who's the director, musical director, he really helped me because he connected me with people from All My Children, who was a casting director.
My grandmother used to watch that show.
Really?
Yeah, we're currently a General Hospital family, but that's another story.
I know. Well, the funny thing is I never went to General Hospital, but I guess, because I was an All My Children fan at that time, and I was dedicated to them. But I went and I read for the casting director. His name was Robert Lambert. And the connection is he played the lead in Gypsy. So he was Michael's friend. So
Okay.
I went, but I read for him, and he goes, Antonio, you're a little green in the reading. I'm going to send you to this acting coach. So he sent me to an acting coach called Sandy Sharon. That was her name. And I tell you, she kicked my ass, when it came to acting. And when I was ready, she called Robert and told her I was ready. I came in, I read for him again, and then he started using me for under 5 roles on soaps.
Okay.
And under 5 is anything with under 5 lines. And eventually I met Daniela Jr., who was a stunt coordinator at the time for All My Children, and he also did shows like Rescue Me, and he's Daniela's son.
Okay.
And so he took a liking to me, so I started doing stunt work, too, for All My Children, and he would call upon my services, obviously, for Rescue Me with Dennis Leary at the time. And I was the type of guy that I went behind the scenes. I would talk to the director. I wanted to know what they were doing, the sound guy, the DP. I was always curious. I wanted to learn because that's, I'm creative, imagination, I'm an engineer, and that's all part of me. And then I started to notice things that didn't make sense to me, and that's the waste. Plastic bottles.
What kind of waste?
Like the use of plastic bottles, all over the place. The fact that they're still using, diesel fuel, and the lighting wasn't energy efficient. And these are stuff that I grew up in, in the energy business, because I did a lot of work with the World Bank. I was the energy manager at the time for it. I did a lot of pharmaceutical, Bristol Myers Squibb, Hospital Roach. I did Radio City Music Hall. I was the energy guy. I did the old Yankee Stadium with the lighting to reduce the load. Because way back then, we didn't use words like sustainable or green. The words we used was energy conservation, energy efficiency. Those terms, to me, in my mind, in our minds, did not exist at that time. So our thing was to reduce the load so we didn't have to build another power plant.
Well, but that makes incredible sense because as an engineer, the incredible red tape that's involved in and the studies and the impact and the hiring and the budgeting. Whereas if you can look in business, the best way to make money is either to buy cheap or to cut your expenses. So in many ways, you're trying to do a lot of the same things from an energy point of view, which makes perfect sense.
Right. Right. And then I started to notice not just cars that were sent to the people in production, like the producers, the actors, and the crew. Why are we using gas-guzzling cars? Why not hybrid? They have the technology now, and they could use it, and like things like that. What are they doing with the costumes? Are you recycling them, or they're giving it away after they use them? What are they doing? To make it sustainable.
eBay.
Right. Well, believe it or not, yes.
Yeah, eBay.
You saw that a lot, So, and catering with the food was a big part of it too, because now if you go to the website, the New York website for the mayor's office for film and television, they have everything outlined there. Vendors, how can you do it, to different recycling plans, to best needs and productions when it comes to being sustainable. So this thing has been really taking off, and people are learning, but you need to spread a message. And the reason why the entertainment business is huge, and believe it or not, I came up with this concept because if you wanted to send a message, film and television is shown all over the world, not just the United States of America. So if the film is sustainable and the network is sustainable and the television shows are sustainable, people can learn from it, learn from doing. And I think that's very important. So when people find out that Disney and DreamWorks, Paramount Pictures and so on, and the big guys are doing it, then everybody will do it. But let's face facts. The independent market, which is, I'm talking about independent producers, when there's a budget of a film, let's say $5 million, it costs money to go green. It's not cheap, and I always believe there should be an incentive put in place, just like an incentive in the buildings, like you have LEED.
Yep.
With the
for
leadership.
For people who don't know, LEED is what?
It's leadership in energy and environmental design. So it's a building certification, which basically is a set of ratings for systems for design, construction, operation, and maintenance for either a building or, believe it or not, homes. And I always believe we should have something set in place for the film industry. And this way it will give an incentive and some kind of rating. This way when you watch a film, when it says rated R, or rated PG-13, they'll see some kind of rating there. And then people will know what that means and go, wow, that film is sustainable.
Well, it's interesting. At the end of the movie, you see like no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. And in many ways, it would be like no animals were harmed in the making of this movie, and no unnecessary energy was wasted.
Yes, there you go.
Or 12,000 bottles gave their lives to make the containers that contain the film.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, here's a funny statistic for you. The PGA, the Producers Guild of America, came out with this number. Their one film equals 22,000 plastic bottles of water are used on the set.
Wow. Is that just from human consumption, or is that in the actual film production?
Film production.
Wow.
One film being produced on the set, the crew and everyone uses 22,000 bottles of plastic bottles. So obviously, that was a concern because what are you doing with these bottles? It gets recycled, and
maybe
it's ridiculous. Yes, it's a lot, and it was a lot to handle. And so now what they're doing is they're using recycled aluminum with, and everybody gets their own little one aluminum bottle, and you fill it up with water, and it's really fantastic idea, and I'm all for it. But you see, like things like that, it always helps. And the thing is, like I said, there's no incentive for independent filmmakers to do this, and I think eventually they will be, and I hope to, because I'm working on a system just like that to see if I could approach the movie ratings of America to try to come up with an idea to spread this message.
Well, you're beginning to see that now when you see things like, fed a grass-fed diet, cruelty-free, non-GMO. You're beginning to see a lot of that on food labels in stores. Yes. And you see at least, no animals are harmed. I believe we're on the path where that kind of thing will be accepted and encouraged. So I think you're on the verge of a very important trend right there.
Yes, and I'll tell you one thing, like Syracuse University, which is a huge university that believes in being sustainable. I was invited to speak at the university because they wanted to open up the entertainment business and how they're being sustainable. And I think what they want to do is they want to teach the future journalists, the future filmmakers, the future engineers to learn this after they graduate, to have it in their minds, embedded in their minds. So when a screenwriter is writing a script, he's thinking sustainable already.
Wow.
A director is filming a film, he's thinking sustainable. Because he doesn't have to go and start pointing fingers. Oh, let's hire a PA, a production assistant that's in tune to being sustainable. You know, and he already knows it, knowledgeable. It makes it easier, quicker on the set, and the cost will go down.
All right, let me stop you right there. This is Richard Solomon. I'm with Antonio Saillant. We are taking care of business. We'll be right back after this quick break. Keep it right here. Welcome back. Richard Solomon taking care of business with sustainability expert Antonio Saillant. Now, we were having a fascinating first round of discussion. I'm going to just interject here for 1 second. We need Antonio in the legal profession, and I'll tell you why. Not as a lawyer, believe me. We have plenty of those, plenty of those. And sort of like the joke, what do you call, 100,000 lawyers at the bottom of the ocean? Well, a beginning. The legal system is probably the greatest waster of paper and resources and lights and everything you can imagine. The courthouses are old. They are not really wired well. They probably use all kinds of old, inefficient lighting, old, inefficient heating. Even with the advent of electronic filing, the court still requires the submission of paper copies of all the documents. So there's really tons and tons of paper being used and copied. I hope that the court system, when they're done with the paper, recycles it. But it's just the generation of all that paper.
Yes.
Even if the court system did recycle the paper, there's still so much paper exchanged by the parties in the litigants. To the extent that people use regular mail to mail documents, there's still envelopes and things inside. And to be honest, the papers are incredibly thick. You should see how thick the papers can get, because you need a copy of, in any motion, you have to have a copy of the complaint, a copy of the answer, a copy of a lot of, they want a lot of papers because that's the rule, but in a lot of ways, it would be much more efficient from an energy and paper point of view if complaints were one page, if answers were one page. And I've always said that. It's like, why can't it just be the complaint is, you owe me money, and the answer is, no, I don't. And and then when you make motions and all this other stuff, they make you put in whole copies of things. So if you're quoting part of a transcript, you have to put the whole transcript in for context. And there's got to be a better way. There has to be a better way to reduce the paper. Besides, most of the time, the court system can't really read all the minutia anyway, which is why they call you in for conferences to say, well, what is this about? And they try to net it down. So, and the thing is, all that paper has to be stored somewhere. There's paper everywhere and warehouses everywhere. And then when you need to get an old file, somebody's got to get it to an old-fashioned truck and go get it and bring it back.
It's amazing. It was like that. It's like that. It was like that in the film industry. With everyone gets a script, and again, you're using paper. And here's the thing: now we have the iPad. So why are we still using scripts? And wasting so much paper. It's just paper everywhere. It's the same thing. It's so easier to. We have the technology to. But you know what? I learned a long time ago, like even in Con Edison, that a lot of people were, they didn't want change. You throw a wrench in in the spokes of a tire, and it like, oh my God, and people freaked out, and it kind of was like that in the very beginning. Here we are trying to reduce energy, but yet there was paper all over the place.
Right. Well, in many ways, is it breaking through transition adversity, or is it more like I don't want to be bothered? Because to me, the way I kind of look at a lot of this stuff, it's, I don't want to be bothered. I want convenience. We live in a throwaway society. So, I mean, when you go to the store and you buy something, like food, they give you something with aluminum that you're going to throw away for after a minute, and then they have a paper bag inside a plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that people most of the time don't say, "Oh, just give it to me," but you'd be amazed how much. I mean, think about this: when you go and get coffee from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's a styrofoam cup, which, by the way, historically today, which is June 29th or 30th, 2015, the city of New York banned styrofoam.
Right.
But think about this.
Correct.
You go to some place, you get coffee in a styrofoam cup. You use that cup of coffee for somewhere between 10 minutes and 5 hours, say. And then that cup will live on for 20, 30,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
in some landfill somewhere. And it won't break down. So,
Right.
you know,
That's the problem we have, and even in the New York subway system, I always hear people complain about the rats and stuff like that. But here's the thing: the garbage can's there, and they throw the garbage into the tracks. People throw garbage on the floor, and the garbage can's right next to them, and people, I think, are just pure lazy. We go to Germany, and in the European countries, these kids, the parents teach them, shut off the light. They have recycling bins, and it's divided. The kids do it. They're in tune to it. Our kids here, unfortunately, you have to tell them twice, 3 times, 4 times. A lot of them get the concept, a lot of them don't. It's inconvenient. But that's why schools, want people like me to do speeches, to teach people, learn from doing.
I want you to come to the court system. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I'm taking a copy of this radio show, and I'm going to start spreading it around because I am in a very energy wasteful, resource wasteful profession, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I've been, I have friends that are lawyers, and I've been invited, and I've gone to the court system, and I also did a lot of the federal courtrooms when I worked for Con Ed. And I saw what you saw, and I was just, honestly, I didn't want to laugh because I didn't find it funny. At this, especially now, we're talking about 12 years later, and they're still using a lot of paper. And it's just, with the technology we have in place and the incentives we have in place in New York City, you would think that they would use them to better our environment, because it's Clint Eastwood and all these remarkable stars are really, really into the environment now. And look how old he is,
He's
and yes,
yeah.
yes, and it's just amazing that they're putting their foot down. Find Robert Redford. He just did a speech, I believe, today at the UN to talk about climate change and because people look up to him as an actor. And it's funny, the first thing that he said when his opening speech was, "I apologize for being an actor. Forgive me for that." Because people look at him as an actor, and they don't understand that he's also into the environment. He's an advocate, and he had to make that clear that he is. and he believes in our planet. He wants something done, and UN could help big time to spread that message worldwide. Because this is not just a United States and America problem. This is a global effort.
Oh, no doubt. Look, pollution elsewhere comes here.
Yes.
The air pollution in other places ends up here. Garbage in the water ends up somewhere.
Yes.
Chemicals in the air circulate everywhere.
Look, I'm a spokesperson for the Green Festival, which is one of the largest festivals for being sustainable in the United States. And I started in the Javits Center in April in New York City. I went to Washington, D.C. last month. I'm going to California in September. My last stop is Portland, Oregon in December. And I'm going to San Francisco before that. And I'll be honest with you, this is my first time doing the Green Festival. Normally I go to film festivals. And this is new to me. The difference is the people that go to the Green Festival are consumers, meaning regular people, and that buy products. And everything that they're buying is sustainable. When I mean, I'm talking about food, clothing, things for the home, solar energy, hybrid cars. BMW was there. I'm looking at their beautiful vehicle, and I was just blown away by all this. And here's the thing. When I started my speech, people were listening because I said, hey, the film industry, we could use these people in the film for product placement to spread a message.
Oh, yeah.
And that always helps. And like I said again, it spreads the message all over the world because it's film and television and people see it and they're aware of it. And they go, wow, this actor is drinking this type of green tea, from this company, or driving that car which is hybrid in the movie itself. Obviously, if you're doing a period piece, it's more difficult to do that.
Yeah, I guess Downton Abbey.
Right.
Could you please pass the filtered recycled water? Why, yes.
Yeah, but exactly. So, of course, but you can still do things, on the set itself, or, that's not like behind the camera, that could be sustainable. And like, the DP, the director of photography, a lot of times they hate change in the lighting. They think that the new energy efficient lighting changes how the film will look, in the camera and the monitors. And Sidney Pollack was one of my favorite directors. And I tell you why. He would look at the monitors, but you know what he did?
No.
He would go behind the camera because he wanted to see if what he saw in the monitors was the same what he saw in the cameras.
Well, that's interesting because I represent some people who do color corrections in photos for a living. And what's interesting is I would see clothing all over their office, and I'm like, what's this? And they're like, oh, we need to know that that this clothing in the shoot actually looks the way it is, in a final digital representation. So there's all this color correction and all this other stuff because you'll see the actual item, you'll see the model wearing it, and you'll go, oh, wow, that's not even close. Even though it's professional photography, professional light, it's just something gets lost in the translation.
Right,
yeah.
Right. So then, believe it or not, I interviewed and I met this gentleman who does this short film festival called Truck Fest. He's an Australian director, producer. His name is John Paulson. And he did that movie with Robert De Niro. It was called Hide and Seek with Dakota Fanning.
Okay, I don't remember that movie, but go ahead.
And he was the director, and he went up to De Niro and he said, Robert, I have this film festival, a short film festival that I started in Australia, and what it does, it opens up the doors to the creativeness of the new technology today. And he started, it was called Tropicana Cafe in Australia. He started with 100 people. He went from 100 people to 50,000 people.
Wow.
And it was just totally amazing. So Robert liked the idea. The films are not more than 8 minutes long, and it opens up the doors to future directors, writers, and actors. And it turned into a global thing. So he tried it out in Tribeca Film Festival, and it was very successful. So he did it in Bryant Park in the big screen, and I tell you, like 100,000 people showed up. Not only does he show it in the big screen, these short films, but he screens it online at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of years ago, he did it in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And amazing. And he does it in Dubai. He does it in India. He goes all over the world and promotes this. And he's very successful doing it. And he's the co-producer of that show on CBS called Elementary.
Oh, yeah.
So here's my concept then. So I thought of that, and I said, well, what if you do the same thing, but then you make the films sustainable, and then do the same thing he's doing. Now what you're doing is spreading a message all over the world, and these directors and writers and producers and actors are learning this and doing it. And it's a film festival that's actually using green technologies, because let's face it, Apple is going green by using their iPhone. They're very environmental friendly. Actually, they even putting up a building that I heard that's going to be run on solar energy.
What about all those batteries?
Exactly. If you notice, they are reducing, the battery size, and they've been eco-friendly. And obviously, do you remember a long time ago with the phones are supposed to get smaller and now they're getting bigger?
Oh, I have a big phone. I have a Galaxy 4. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I have fat fingers and I can't use those little keys.
And the only thing that turns me off is that it gets hot, and obviously, that's not a good thing. When the phone is getting, that means there's some kind of heat transfer going on that's not working.
Right.
And I always believe that. And things are missing, like in certain computers. You remember they used to have a fan to cool the load, the heat load, the heat transfer.
I actually worked on thermal cooled modules at a very large computer manufacturer where they used pistons over a substrate. That was 144 chips on a substrate, and then they would have the pistons pull the heat up as water went over it to cool it down. So I know the problem of heat and chips because that's something I did in the 1980s. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think eventually, I know a lot of people are looking at the fuel cell, as a better thing for batteries, for cameras, like film cameras and stuff, because it does save a lot of time and energy, because you got to recharge these batteries for the cameras constantly, and I've heard them talk about it, but they haven't done it because of the cost value. Remember, everything's budgeted, and,
oh, yeah.
And also technology, it's going to take a while for a film to be 100% sustainable.
Well, one question I have in the minute and a half we have left in this particular segment is why I called the city of New York's 311 number, and I'm like, what are you supposed to do with batteries? Regular AA batteries that you use in recorders and this and that. They go, oh, you just throw it in the household garbage, and that bothers me. That
actually you're supposed to bag it and send it back to the manufacturer.
No, they said that's only with rechargeable batteries. But regular batteries, regular non-chargeable batteries. They said just throw in the regular garbage, and I'm like, really? That's terrible.
Well, no, they have a new. I think if you go to 311 now,
Yeah.
I think they have a section where they have recycling of technology equipment like computers, batteries, all in one thing.
Right, but
one
I'm just
place.
talking about regular batteries, just regular batteries, just not.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think it fits in the section of technology.
Oh,
Like,
I got to take a look.
You don't throw out your computer in the garbage.
No,
You
no.
recycle, right? You're recycling your computers and regular batteries because I think what happens is it's taken to another facility. You can't recycle, right? You gotta. It's like a ballast, electronic ballast.
Yeah.
Do you remember the old days where they had? I did Columbia University.
Hang on one second. Hold on. You're going to finish that thought. On the other side of this break, Richard Solomon on sustainability with Antonio Saillant. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Richard Solomon taking care of business, sailing through a fast hour of radio. Again, if you want our websites on YouTube, look us under TCB Radio, WCWP. Put that in the little search magnifying glass. You'll see a whole pile of stuff. We're doing really, really well. And our website is tcbradio.com. You can always send us an email. You could call us at the station, 516-299-2683, and leave a message or talk to people about the show. And we welcome everybody's thoughts and comments. And that's how we get great guests like Antonio Saillant, who was recommended by Jack Lerner. So, see, it's all about 2 or 3 degrees of separation. So speaking of separating compostable from plastic and paper, we were talking about Columbia University and computers and ballast before I rudely interrupted you for the hard break. So why don't you pick it up from there?
Well, first of all, what I would do when I tell a lot of people when it comes to batteries, and they're not rechargeable, is to call up the manufacturer, and a lot of them would take them, and they'll send you these plastic bags, and you just send it to them, and they'll recycle them.
All right, because I go through plenty of batteries on the radio, remotes and little handhelds and tons of stuff like that.
Yeah, and they'll give you an answer for it, what to do with it. And I've learned over the years that people, especially in New York, now you don't throw your computer out, with the garbage. It goes into a bin where it's technology. So
right, e-cycle, I think they call it.
Yes. So, and they have that a lot in the film sets too, obviously. DVDs, a lot of them, they get crushed and recycled. So, that's thing. But Columbia University, way back in the day, when I did the energy analysis for them and they converted to energy efficiency using equipment, HVAC, and the lighting, these facilities are so old that the lighting had PCB ballasts.
Oh, I remember polychlorobiphenyls. They're nasty.
Yeah. How crazy is that? So the contractors, you got to be careful when you take this out because they could be leaking. It gets on your hands, and so they had to wear gloves and special gloves to do this, and had to be recycled And there were companies that would recycle this, and now obviously that era is done. Hopefully there are no PCB ballots ever anywhere. But you never know if you can find some. But there are recycling companies that deal with stuff like that.
Weren't they in a lot of transformers?
Yes.
I think they were, yeah. So there may be,
exactly. Well, Con Edison, there's still old transformers out there, and you know this when you hear of one exploding and it's old, and unfortunately
they evacuate the street.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have inspectors. Obviously, they go throughout New York City doing their job, but unfortunately, sometimes equipment breaks, things happen, accidents happen, and it's too late to respond. But it's all positive. Hopefully, that one day all the equipment will be changed and everything be updated And it's just not just the continent, it's a lot of the utilities all over the country too, I'm pretty sure of that. Because you read this stuff all over, even Long Island or New Jersey, and it's hard, but that's why everybody's got their policies, and governors are working really hard to do their job and to push this environmental efforts to create being sustainable in the city, in the state, and help because that alone spreads a message all over the United States. And I have this theory that if we put together all 50 governors together, come out with one energy policy to be sustainable, I think we'll go further. But that's a hard job to do.
Well, it is, especially when some states have coal as resources and others have, everybody has different kinds of natural resources, so they all want to monetize their resources. That's sort of the problem, which is, what do you do if you have something that can be monetized, but it's not exactly clean?
Right.
You'd rather be sitting on the big natural gas field than the coal mine right now.
Yeah, and like I said, technology, and what do you do with those people if you get rid of coal and all those people lose their jobs and they have families, and what do you do?
Right. You could crush a whole bunch of counties, and you have generations of people who've worked in certain industries and industries that look when Grumman left Long Island back in the day, that was all these great engineering jobs, and then with it went the need for teachers and policemen and laundromats and grocery stores and everything else. So when a sector of the economy gets taken out one way or another, there's definitely shockwaves. Absolutely.
And I remember Bethpage Grumman. It was located in Bethpage, Long Island, because I went to State University of Farmingdale, and I studied aviation technologies, and then from there I transferred to New York Institute of Technology, where I got my aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering degree. So a lot of my teachers worked for Grumman. They were old Air Force World War II pilots. They were they were in the 70s at that time, 70s, 80s, and I remember it was booming. It was great, fantastic. And then look what happens. My senior project, I designed energy-efficient commercial airliner.
Oh, wow.
And when I went to Syracuse University last year, I was in a turboprop aircraft, gas guzzler. And when I landed in Syracuse, I had to open up. I had changed my whole speech, and I had to say that. I said how I designed the commercial airliner, energy efficient, and we're still doing this, years later.
Right.
Right. Why?
Right. And you'd think that the airlines would have a selfish interest in being more efficient, since the cost of fuel is so high.
Right.
And that's probably a major component of their budgets.
Yes. It's huge, and I just couldn't believe it. All the planes, a turboprop. I was just, wow. And you know what? They use that a lot for short distance, like Syracuse, 45 minutes away. A lot of times in Washington, D.C., they use those aircrafts.
Why? Are they considered safer or more durable? Or
durable, safer, and what my understanding was, because I was questioning it. I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. And, the money wasted must be tremendous. I'll be honest with you. I didn't understand the whole concept. If I had more time, I would do a complete analysis, to really figure it out, why. Because if you go to an airport, you see those aircrafts all around. Every major airliner has it. I think they use those aircrafts for a short distance.
Right.
I went to Washington on a corporate jet, and so, but it's still a gas guzzler, and that. They haven't really modified there. A lot of the the structure has changed. It's lighter materials, which is good, and I'm pretty sure that one day they'll catch up to the technology of today. Just like the cars are doing now. I think that technology, slowly but surely, is changing the automotive industry.
I happen to represent the dealership of a particular manufacturer, which I won't mention, and nice guys, the whole bit. And somebody was telling me that on the hybrid car that they have currently, one of the guys said that he was getting 70 miles per gallon. And I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing.
Yep. And this is the stuff that I keep preaching.
So how do we convert the preaching into a Bible that you can disseminate out there? Because
it's got to start with the governor to the mayor, And
why don't you write the playbook for the governors? I'm serious.
I'm not laughing. You know why? Because I'm considering it, and that's the whole rating thing is very important. I'm trying to develop a rating structure for the film and television industry and present it to the Motion Pictures Association. And the reason why I want to approach them is because they do the rating system for, the audience,
right.
Rated R, rated PG. And those are the people you want to speak to because if you have them on your side, you have Hollywood and every motion picture, whether it's independent or not, and I think if they like the idea, like the people that everybody in the entertainment business is starting to do it. So here's the thing. If you give them an opportunity, let's say, for example, 5 stars is the most, right?
Yeah.
So if you see 5 stars, for example, on a film of being sustainable to 5 stars, tell me that everybody, whoever it is, Paramount, DreamWorks, they want to be that 5. They don't want to be 3. And then all of a sudden Paramount Pictures is 5.
It's sort of like the restaurant ratings in New York City where you see someone and it's like, C, and you're like,
Right. Exactly. Disney's going to say, we better be 5 guys, okay? Because every company now has a director of sustainability. Even the NFL, the Major League Baseball, if you do research, you're going to see that there's a gentleman there or a female there trained to get these people online with being sustainable.
Wow.
And it's very important whether you're in the sports industry or in the film industry or in the television industry, because that sends a message again all over the world. If they do it, everyone's doing it. The buildings are doing it, and it'll catch on. And guess what? Our kids are going to do it too, because they're going to learn from them. And speeches like the things I do at the Green Fest.
I can only imagine if there are 22,000 water bottles expended in one movie, how many water bottles are lost, to a sporting event.
Exactly. There you go. And they're still using these plastic cups, in basketball games, and I just stare. What do you say? And then this is the thing. They have a director of sustainability that works for these companies. The NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and I still see these plastic cups, and it just amazes me that they haven't done anything. And there's still paper being used all over the place. I still see it, and sometimes I'm not going to say what set, that I've been on, that I would still catch it, and certain actors don't want change. They don't want to use the iPad. They want to have a script in their hands, and why not? People are reading books on the iPads, and why can't you use it? Why can't you use the iPad? It doesn't make sense to me. It's simple. It's there.
Well,
they want a 120-page script or a 60-page script or 45-page, whatever it is.
See, I'm very sustainable because I never use a script here because we just gunsling. We don't have time for it.
Right.
No research department.
Right.
It's just spontaneous, off the cuff improv talk.
was to all my speeches, because I'm always nervous. Like if I walk on stage and I start speaking, I have paper in my hands or index cards or something, and somebody will say, "Hey, if you're so sustainable, why are you using paper?"
But because from a disaster recovery point of view, you don't need to plug the index cards into an outlet in a power failure.
Yeah, right. So I just I follow my heart, passion, and people see it.
Well, where did this? Okay, because we don't have that much time left. Believe it or not, we have like 3 minutes. Where did this passion come from?
I think it's because of where I came from in the energy business, and because in those days we really believed in what we were doing. When I worked for Con Ed, they really believed that going out there and saving, a KW to reduce the load, so we don't have that power plant to build, I think was very important for them. And that stayed in my heart, and then over the years, when I hear of friends of mine or my mother who developed lung cancer, she never smoked a cigarette in her life, made me believe that, now I'm not going to use the word sustainable or green. I'm not going to use the words climate change. I'm not going to use global warming. I'm going to use these words. The fact that something's wrong with the air that we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, and the food that we're eating. And we're getting cancer.
At alarming rates.
An alarming rate.
And at younger ages.
And young age. When I hear my biggest mentor in life was Michael Landon, who was the actor in
Little House on the Prairie and Bonanza.
And also a director. And that man was physically fit. Got cancer. Bill Bixby from The Hulk got also cancer. Patrick Swayze, cancer. Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen died of mesothelioma from the asbestos that he used from racing.
Yes. Sidney Pollack, cancer. My mentor. And my hair just stood up right now when I said his name. Yeah. Because that man was the biggest influence in my life, when it comes to being a filmmaker and being creative. Ted Kotcheff also, who's the one who directed Weekend at Bernie's, Rambo, the original, North Dallas 40, all these great films. I learned from these old Hollywood people, and they all have passion and heart, and believe it or not, they all have a passion in the environment. They always did, and Ted Kotcheff, who was the executive producer of Special Victims Unit for 13 seasons, always had that in his heart when it came to being on the set and sustainable. For NBC, for that show, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, I'm going to tell you, they had a wonderful program when it comes to being sustainable. And that's what I totally look for. And I was, I even congratulate Ted, because, you know what? A lot of people are not in tune to it, but he was. He was.
To his credit. All right, yep. Speaking of limited resources, we are out of time.
Okay.
All right, great stuff with Antonio Saillant, who I appreciate and thank for being with us today. We'll see you next week.
Taking Care of Business was produced in the studios at WCWP, hosted by Rich Solomon and produced and edited by Chris Maffei. For more, visit tcbradio.com and WCWP.